This is the last scene. From the very first scene, when Sophie goes out, she always wears a straw hat, and there's a red ribbon on it. She always wears a red shawl too. It's a sign that she's always a young girl, even when she's old. But in the last scene, the ribbon suddenly turns black. Miyazaki has used black as a symbol of a witch since Kiki's Delivery Service. Miyazaki shows this clearly by drawing a black ribbon so that he doesn't have to explain. This is actually the proof. So there are 9 different witches or wizards all together, including Sophie. So keep that in mind. How could I know? Yes, people don't realize it. Miyazaki's films are so complex. It's all calculated. That's why they're so interesting. Now, it's already 30 minutes, but I'll continue. I'm going to explain the story and the plot. I'll explain the difference. The story is usually the scenes laid out in order like the storyboard. They're in the right order, whereas the plot is laid out based on cause and effect. So for the plot, the scenes are laid out according to a timeline, and the story focuses on how to present this. In Dragon Ball, Son Goku, raised by an old man in the countryside, meets Bulma, and they set out on a journey together. This is the story. The plot goes like this. A long time ago, there was a lost child of Ryu tribe on planet Namek. The good part of him became a god, and the bad part of him became the evil king Piccolo. Frieza, who dominates the universe, conquers the Saiyans. The Saiyans send Kakarot, who later becomes Son Goku. Plot is laid out based on time. The incident that happened before is always what triggers the next incident. So you can see the cause and effect. Story is more about how you present it. The rhythm of the story changes in the middle. There's part A, B, and C in this film, but usually Miyazaki's films end at part B. As you can see, there's 2 lines in part A, 3 lines in part B, 4 lines in part C. It goes on to part D and part E and goes on and on. At the end, the words can't fit in anymore. The number of words grow towards the end. This is because when Miyazaki was making the storyboard, he realized that the individual cuts in part A were too long. They were 10 seconds each. When Suzuki asked him about this, he said, "Damn, Sophie is so old and slow. I became slow as well." He couldn't change that anymore. So each cut is very long in part A and part B. But as you reach the second half, it gets much faster. That's because they were trying to get back to 6 seconds per cut. Each cut becomes shorter and shorter as you go along. So it speeds up. In part A, Sophie falls in love with Howl at first sight. She is turned into an old lady by the spell of the Witch of the Waste. In part B, she starts working as a cleaning lady at Howl's castle. Howl is summoned by the king. Howl is disappointed by the color of his hair. In part C, Howl is scared of both Suleiman and the Witch of the Waste, and he sends Sophie instead. When Sophie arrives at the palace, the Witch of the Waste turns into an old lady. Howl runs away from a magic fight. Sophie takes the dog and the old lady home. These are part A, B, and C, half of the story. Like I said, this story is told from Sophie's point of view. This is hard to see because Miyazaki at some point decided to cut all the scenes that have nothing to do with Sophie's romance. when you look at it closely, it's all there. But, for example, in the TV series Sanadamaru, all the scenes of Lord Nobunaga Oda's prime were cut out from the story. Those scenes were cut just because the protagonist, Nobushige Sanada, wasn't in them. Instead, the story covers the era of Nobunaga and the following years up to the summer siege of Osaka from Nobushige's point of view as he grows up to become a warlord. So if you don't have the basic knowledge of this period, it's hard to understand. And the suicide of Nobunaga is only described by the narrator. But in Howl's Moving Castle, there is not even a narration. For example, if the story is told only from Nobushige's girlfriend, Kiri's point of view, and just added some narration to it, everything would seem so abrupt. The viewers would lose track of history, and everything would become oversimplified. That's what's happening here. Now, this is very important. Take a look at this. This is the plot of Howl's Moving Castle. It's not told in the film, but here it is. This plot will allow you to understand more about this film. It's pretty long, but I'll read from the top. Let's look at the plot of Howl's Moving Castle according to the timeline. You can take screenshots if you want. The neighboring country is a kingdom founded by witches, a magic kingdom. Because the prince is a wizard, they have state-of-the-art magic. Sophie's country competed with them using science, like Marley in Attack on Titans. Howl's uncle tries to finish writing a magic scroll, but dies. This is important. This means that when Sophie travels back in time to Howl's childhood, you see a paperweight here, and the paperweights are shaped like gun batteries and all the other things Howl loves. At first, I thought it was Howl's paperweight, but that doesn't make sense because back at that time, he's only like 10 years old, but it says unfinished draft on the desk. The draft means a manuscript that is set to be published, but that has not been published yet. So that means that this belonged to his deceased uncle. This scene is at the end of part E. This wizard uncle died before he was able to publish his book. It has not been published yet, so it's a draft.